And when it came down to it, we didn't know what we ought to say because we really don't know what to do.
Most people first see Alan Watts in a short online clip, usually posted by someone hoping to impress their friends. However, within seconds his voice cuts straight through ordinary anxiety and feels strangely familiar. And once we take a look at his full biography, the picture grows far more layered. Born inside English Christianity and later ordained as a priest, Watts carried an intimate understanding of the very burdens Western audiences still feel. He had lived inside the system that shapes our identity and guilt too. So, when he later spoke about ego and freedom, his words landed with the weight of lived experience rather than some distant theory. That personal grounding explains why listeners still lean in. He named the stressors they already carried within and offered very clear language for them.
And in the same way, there seems to be a complete difference of style between the things that human beings do and the things that nature does, even though human beings are themselves part of nature.
Alan Watts entered the world in 1915 and spent his school years at King's School, Canterbury, surrounded by centuries of English Christian tradition. Faith there was simply the air people breathed, not an optional interest. Even so, his attention turned eastward from an early age. By 15, he already described his outlook as Buddhist. This early orientation created a continuity that ran beneath every later chapter of his life. The same core questions kept returning, no matter how his outer circumstances changed. The young man drawn to Buddhism took a surprising next step. He became an Anglican priest. Watts later described the entire period as a deliberate experiment. Ordained in the Anglican Communion, he served as Episcopal chaplain at Northwestern University. His main purpose was to test if Christianity could still provide a direct, living mystical experience that people could feel for themselves. That search led him toward the idea of perennial philosophy, the shared depth beneath different traditions. He did what few people dare when they begin to doubt a system. He stepped fully inside it and tested it from within. The experience gave him an up-close view of how religious structures shape identity, turning duty into performance and belief into posture. Those years left him with an emotional map of Western religion that he could draw on with authority for the rest of his life. Over time, the institutional role grew too narrow for Watts. Clerical expectations clashed with his personal way of living, yet the deeper mismatch lay elsewhere. He craved direct spiritual contact and kept meeting layers of authority instead. Many people recognize the pattern. They enter a tradition hoping it will feed a real hunger, only to find the structure mainly demands outward correctness. Just take a look at modern Japan. Respect for the institution remained, but genuine connection faded. After engaging with full seriousness, Watts eventually stepped away. The departure gave his later reflections unmistakable credibility. He spoke from inside the experience, never from guesswork. California opened the stage that finally matched his voice. Watts joined the American Academy of Asian Studies in San Francisco and soon became its dean. Free from any church framework, he could speak directly to the restlessness running through Western life. The timing was perfect. Many listeners had grown weary of conventional religion, yet still carried the same anxious habits. Through his television series, Eastern Wisdom and Modern Life, he brought profound ideas into ordinary living rooms. He addressed people who still had jobs to keep and nights when sleep would not come. And in that setting, he became far more than just some scholar. Alan Watts turned into a public voice who made deep concepts feel immediately usable while never watering them down. Watts reached millions because he could make the complex feel close and half-remembered. His first book, The Spirit of Zen, appeared when he was only 20 and already showed his gift at work. He turned difficult ideas into sensations that listeners recognized before they even agreed. His relaxed tone mattered just as much as the content. Nothing sounded stiff or self-important. Everything carried the ease of someone who had finally found room to breathe. That atmosphere gave people permission to sit with hard questions without bracing themselves. He also spoke straight into a modern kind of phenomenon, the constant stress to improve and fix oneself. Watts handed that fatigue its own language, and listeners instantly heard their own inner voice inside it. By the time Alan Watts reached a wide audience, one central idea guided everything he said. He invited people to examine the sense of being a separate self cut off from everything else. That feeling, he believed, lies at the root of much modern unhappiness. People spend years building and guarding an image of who they are. The effort will eventually grow exhausting. Watts knew exactly how to name that weight. Listeners turned to Alan Watts for relief once his popularity surged. His talks delivered a genuine release for the modern mind by voicing private struggles in ways that left no one feeling foolish. Awareness of those teachings gives the later chapters of his life story extra weight. The ideas themselves prove surprisingly difficult to practice day after day. Close examination of his actual life shows he never fully broke free from the pressures he described so clearly. This raw honesty infuses the entire narrative with greater vitality and authenticity. Watts kept returning to one central observation. People usually feel like isolated observers locked inside a body and looking out at everything else. He identified that feeling as a basic mistake. Individuals quietly invent an internal director behind the eyes and call it the self. Daily life then becomes an endless contest for control. The body starts to feel like a vehicle that needs steering, while the surrounding world appears full of threats and other people register as either mirrors or obstacles. Once the pattern sets in, someone can spend decades defending fragile assumptions without noticing. Watts presented these ideas in language that felt immediate and personal. Anyone who has mentally replayed an old argument or kept a calm face while panic brewed underneath already knows the hidden strain. He simply gave that strain a precise name, describing the ego as a social mask mistaken for the whole person. From that foundation, he developed a widely recognized concept. The chase for complete psychological security actually produces more anxiety. Contemporary culture trains people to treat uncertainty as something that must be conquered at all costs. Watts located the root of much unhappiness right there. Existence keeps moving while the mind keeps demanding guarantees, and the resulting gap creates stress. And not the good kind either. Peace never arrives simply by locking every circumstance into place. Suffering grows from the attempt to freeze a flowing reality. Such attempts always fall short, as seen today in productivity methods and self-help systems that promise lasting calm. The mind simply swaps one worry for the next. Watts pointed toward a different approach. Release the demand for permanence in an impermanent world. This view did not call for passivity. Much of the burden people feel comes from clinging. clear recognition turns insecurity from a personal defect into an ordinary part of being alive. His Christian upbringing gave him an inside view of guilt in Western traditions. Those religious structures often tied spiritual life to constant moral pressure and a sense of never measuring up. Later, he directly confronted that climate. People easily slip into cycles of self-correction, followed by self-reproach, while still appearing respectable on the surface. Guilt, he observed, simply keeps the ego occupied through dramas of self-improvement. The effort can look admirable from the outside, yet still leaves the same anxious center in charge. Watts encouraged listeners to spot the pattern and step outside it. The idea landed because many already felt exhausted by their own inner criticism. He suggested a more profound change by proposing that the whole project of perfecting the self might be the real trap. Watts expressed ideas about acceptance and the limits of ego control with striking clarity. His private life, however, carried heavy struggles. He died at 58 from alcoholic cardiomyopathy, connected to years of alcohol abuse. This personal reality accompanies the idealized image many admirers still hold. The story refuses to simplify. Alan Watts never became a flawless teacher nor a complete fraud. That ambiguous position is precisely why he continues to hold attention. Observers often assume deep insight must show visible perfection, and that a biography should confirm the teaching. Watts offered no such reassurance. His life instead leaves a sharper question. Can someone truly grasp a profound truth while remaining caught in ordinary human appetites and difficulties? The answer his biography supplies is yes. Followers react in different ways to this disparity. Some let the personal flaws erase the message entirely. Others insist the ideas retain their value anyway. Both responses miss what keeps the account compelling. Watts stayed visibly human in ways that resisted polishing. This recognition changes nothing about the real damage his struggles caused and does not soften genuine suffering. It simply removes the illusion that authentic insight must produce a perfected person. Someone can understand the mechanics of the ego and still wrestle with compulsion. A person can describe liberation and still stumble in intimate bodily ways. The divide feels painful, yet also honest in its own way. Watts still retains an audience because he gave clear language to a heaviness that has not gone away. His books and talks continue to circulate widely while the modern mind still runs on the same fuel of anxiety and the urge to secure the self through constant effort. He met that pressure with directness and a voice that felt alive rather than academic. The fact that he never became a clean symbol keeps his observations sharp. The interplay between his expressed philosophy and his lived reality prevents the insights from growing too tidy. This dynamic is exactly what keeps the work worth watching. He could articulate release beautifully while remaining entangled in very human ways. The ending lingers in memory precisely because it refuses to resolve neatly. In the end, Alan Watts served as a brilliant guide to certain questions. He was also a man unable to translate those questions into a flawless life. That tension sits at the heart of the story and explains why the account remains worth returning to. Did any of the things said here resonate? Did they feel like they were true for you? Then you might feel like looking a little further into it. For that purpose, we have put together a digital retreat that is built to bring you into direct contact with the clarity that's here and has been here your entire life. Through carefully designed meditations, teachings, and simple pointers that remove the unnecessary effort around this whole subject, you will find what's real and what isn't. If that sounds like something worth exploring, you'll find the link in the description. And if you prefer to listen to our videos with or without music, you can find them on Patreon.